Hi guys. This, of course, is a topic which is close to everyone's heart, and the reason I'm starting off with this slide is literally this is what doctors have become today. That in order to remain in the same place, you need to be constantly running. I understand exercising on a treadmill is good for us, but not too much. So it's really become completely stressing. And one of the reasons I'm talking today is I've been an IVF specialist for donkey's years, but I'm also reinventing myself. So I'm an angel investor as well. I invest in the stock markets, and that's what I'm going to be sharing some of this with you. I think this is a particularly opportune time because COVID has served as a wake up call. There's no question that COVID has disrupted medical practice completely. And especially for surgeons, for example, or people who do a lot of planned elective procedures, professional income has taken a big hit. And that's why I think people understand that you need to be able to plan what you're going to be doing with your money, how you're going to be able to generate it. And you can't just remain dependent on professional income anymore. So the first question, of course, is why aren't doctors rich? I mean, hey, we're the ones who came first. We're the nerds. We're the geeks. We're the ones who got the 99% and the 100%. And all the guys who could never pass and who had to copy from us, they're the ones who did their BComs and their CAs or whatever else, and they're earning 5 times as much as we are. They drive around in a Mercedes and we're stuck in a Maruti. So why is that happening? And I think the first thing I need to emphasize is the reason doctors aren't rich is because we honestly don't have any financial freedom. Because for most of us, our only source of bread and very little butter, unfortunately, is our daily income. Which means effectively doctors are daily wage earners. On the day you do the operation, you earn the money. On the day you do your consultation, you earn the money. But if you decide to take a break, you're not going to get any money. Which is why doctors are so reluctant to take holidays and they're actually kind of a little bit scared. And what happens is when you're young, you're willing to work hard, there's lots of cash coming inside. And effectively, the good thing about medicine is people are going to fall ill all the time. So it's a recession proof business. But don't confuse cash flow with wealth. And the reality is there is very little wealth creation for most doctors, which is why retirement can be a nightmare. And one of the reasons doctors don't retire, of course, partly because we're so busy being doctors that we don't have any other interests. And we kind of say, oh God, once I stop seeing patients, then what else will I do with my time? And often it's our wives who kick us out and say, please continue seeing patients. I don't want you sitting at home eating my head. But more importantly, if you don't generate that cash flow, and the only way of generating cash flow is by seeing patients, you just don't have any peace of mind. And I think this is a big problem. And I've learned this the hard way. I think part of the problem with being very smart as a student is we think no end of ourselves. We actually become a little intellectually arrogant. And it's like, of course, I know everything. If I know everything in Harrison, if I know everything in, of course, I mean, how can anyone compare with how smart I am? If I know all these 500 different arcane facts, all this is just child's play. But they actually don't. And in fact, if you talk to most scamsters, they say the easiest people to take for a ride are doctors, especially because they think they know so much. So let's step backwards. I've been asked certain questions. Should we invest in crypto? Should we invest in this? Which is the best stock to buy? And I think the first thing we need to do is understand what financial planning is. And step number one is goal setting. Because if you don't know what your goal is, there's just no way you're going to be able to reach it. So I think that's the first thing. What do you want for yourself? How much money do you want to keep in the future? What are your expenses going to be? So you have to be able to sort that out. How hard are you willing to work? When do you want to retire? What other interests do you have? The second is asset allocation, which again is very closely tied to diversification. And what does that mean? You don't put all your eggs in one basket because, I mean, it's great if you have a great basket, but sometimes there is problems. And that's why it's helpful to be able to say, well, okay, there's some here and some there. And typically the returns on some of these assets will change over time. So that when you're young and you're working hard, most of your cash flow will come from professional income because there won't be much money, spare money you'll have to be able to invest in the equity markets. But as you get older and the equity markets start giving you a return because of the magic of compounding, you will earn much more money from the equity markets than you will from professional income. And that's such a great spot to be in because then you have complete financial freedom. It's all passive income. Whether you work or you don't work, the equity markets will keep on making you richer and wealthier. All this is very simple. And I strongly encourage you start by reading books on how to plan your life financially. But it's not easy because it needs discipline. And I always tell people the best way to make money is to use other people's time and other people's money. And that's the reason why bankers are so rich, because that's exactly what they do. I'm going to break up my talk into three areas. One is conventional investments, and these are things like gold, real estate, equity, all the new fancy asset classes, what works, what doesn't, and why. I'm also going to be talking about some of the mistakes which doctors make and what you can do to prevent them. And then I'm going to be talking about what we can do as far as investing in startups go, because I think that's a hot area and it's something which is very close to my heart. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I think the good thing is I have nothing to sell. I'm not trying to promote a mutual fund. I'm not trying to tell you to invest in this. And that's something you need to remember. Always be wary of advice from financial advisors who make money based on the advice which they're going to give you. And that's why bankers are such poor sources of advice, because your bank manager has certain targets to meet and he keep on calling you up. अरे डॉक्टर साहब थोड़ा इसमें पैसा डालो, हमने नया म्यूचुअल फंड खोला है, इसमें तो रिटर्न आने ही वाला है. And poor doctors are reasonably gullible and they're always happy to oblige the bank manager. They don't know any better because they haven't got a goal in their head. So, your most important investment, and this is especially true when you're young, is going to be yourself. So, you need to invest in yourself and your own practice. And that's why medical education, making sure you remain up to date, you attend conferences, you polish your surgical skills is so important. Yeah, before you start investing in anything else, first invest in yourself. Grow your clinic, learn what the new procedures are, keep on mastering new skills. Traveling overseas, seeing what other people are doing is very, very helpful. I don't know if you've read this book by Dr. Atul Gawande, famous guy, who actually invited an other senior professor to come and watch him doing surgery. Now, Atul Gawande has 20 years of experience, and yet he called someone and said, "Can you watch what I'm doing so that you can help me?" That's so humble. And this additional person acts like a coach and tells you, why don't you try this or why don't you try that? I think that's great. And I think that's the beauty about partnering with junior doctors. Because as you get older, whether you like it or not, you run out of energy, you become a little bit jaded, and then having young blood, people who understand, and the young blood has a lot of energy, lots of skills, but they don't have any patience. And this is actually a great way of marrying the two things together. I think as far as entrepreneurship goes, there is no question about it that medicine is a profession and it's something we're very proud of. It's a service profession. But every private medical practice is also a small business. We can't afford to forget that. You need to learn practice management skills. And I know this is an extremely sore topic and I always get into trouble when I talk about it. But cuts, kickbacks, and commissions have become so mainstream. But the reality is, unless you can cut out the middleman and unless you can thrive without giving cuts, you're always going to be at the mercy of someone who chooses to refer patients to you. Now, this could be the GP, this could be anyone else, or it could actually be a website like Tracto these days. So please don't let that happen. You need to be able to own your own patients. And I think this is another important concept. If you only keep on thinking about income in terms of money, I think you're always going to be unhappy because a lot of people who do much less valuable work, much less stressful work, will end up earning a lot more than you. And honestly, being a doctor is a fairly thankless job. In the sense, when things are going well, doctor आप भगवान हो, और फिर प्रॉब्लम होता है तो डॉक्टर तुम शैतान हो. And I mean, I don't think we're either gods or devils. We're just human beings trying our best. But we always get these extremes. And that's why it's important to value the emotional income. That when a patient says thank you, when they say thank you to a bureaucrat or a politician, they only do it because they want a favor from that particular chair. But when they say thank you to a doctor, it actually comes from the heart. And that's why it's something which you should value. And that's not something which most people have. Most professionals don't have that kind of ability to be able to get that heartfelt thanks. And I think it means a lot. Again, the only way to be an efficient doctor is to make sure that you have assistants and juniors. They're your biggest asset. And unless your employees are happy, there's no way your patients are going to be happy. The only way to keep your patients happy is to keep your employees happy. As doctors, I mean, we skimp on salaries, we don't bother to train them. There's a lot of churn, or she's just a receptionist, all kinds of things. And I think that's terrible. And I think sometimes I think a good idea is you You should actually call up your clinic as what we call a mystery shopper and see how well the phone is answered and see how well the receptionist behaves. And honestly, if she's not doing a good job, because she is the front of your clinic, she's the first person who gives the first impression. And if she's not doing a good job, none of the patients are even going to come into your clinic, because it doesn't matter how good you may be as a doctor, they actually need to cross certain hurdles to get to you. I'm not going to go over a lot of this stuff because most of it is basic applied common sense. Most of us know it. But we have this free website. It's called thebestmedicalcare.com. We've written lots of books. And one of the books we wrote many years ago is called Successful Medical Practice. It's available free on the website. And it's interesting. I mean, I must have written the book, it's nearly now 20 years. But nothing has really changed. I mean, I guess it's not surprising. The principles are always going to remain the same. And it's all about what doctors need to do in order to put patients first, in order to make sure they have a successful medical practice. I think this be a very useful book. I love the subtitle. It's Why Most Medical Practices Don't Work and What You Do About It. And the reason he calls it the E-myth physician, he says, as doctors, we're so married to our surgical skills. If you're a surgeon, or your consultation skills, or your ability to interpret an X-ray, or what have you, your professional skills, that you don't understand how to run your business. And therefore, even though you do a very good job, you're not able to grow. So the important thing he emphasizes, it's not enough to run just your business. You need not enough to just work in your business. You need to work on your business so that you can grow it. So you can start delegating, you can start handing things off, you can have standard SOPs so that it works perfectly even in your absence. So basically, what does anyone want from a good investment? And this is fairly standard common sense. You need to be safe. People worry so much about return on capital that it's got to be profitable that they forget about the importance of safety, return of capital. And I think that's the first most important thing, because the more speculative these returns are, the more hyped they are, much more likely that they're going to be unsafe. So returns first, you need safety of capital. It needs to be profitable. What does liquidity mean? It means when you want the money, you should be able to take it out again. And each of these asset classes I'm going to be talking about has certain pros and cons, and we'll discuss those. Of course, it needs to be tax efficient. That's always a big problem because the government will take away a lot of whatever you earn. And finally, and this is important, it needs to be customized to meet your personal goals. And again, I'm emphasizing goals. Unless you know what your goals are, no financial advisor is ever going to be able to create a financial plan which is right for you. So you need to spend that time and energy. And the good thing is, you're a doctor, guys. You're smart. You're capable of figuring all these things up. Anyone who understands the facial nerve and the cause and where the vagus runs, all this is actually child's play. It's all common sense. I think this is important, and this is a great book, which I'll come back to again afterwards. And I think this is the truth, is that when you don't have any plan at all, you keep on worrying about money, and it's a new worry every time. Whereas once you've created a plan, and it literally just needs to be a one-page plan, and that's the title of the book, the one-page plan, you'll be sorted. And again, this is important, and therefore people will listen to the budget and will do day trading and figure out crypto. And, when doctors talk, no one ever talks about how much money they lost on crypto. They'll only talk, अरे यार 2 दिन में पैसा डबल हो गया, तू बिटकॉइन क्यों नहीं खरीदता है? अरे यार बिटकॉइन तो अभी ओल्ड फैशन है, डोगी कॉइन करना चाहिए, वो इलॉन मस्क कर रहा है. And the reality is there are only two things that matter and things you can control. And you need to focus only where these two intersect. Everything else is really pointless. So before we start talking about investment, we need to talk about insurance. As I said, safety first. And obviously, insurance is safety because that's risk management. And you need three kinds of insurance. All of us do. One, of course, is life insurance. Incidentally, life insurance is important when you're young because in case you die early, someone needs to take care of your dependents. Then, of course, if you're a doctor, you need Mediclaim, which is for yourself. Because irrespective of whether you're a doctor or not, today, if you end up getting a heart attack or falling sick, the hospital's still going to give you this fat bill. And you'll only understand how fat hospital bills can be when you actually receive them. Because when you're on the other end and you're actually billing the patient, none of this actually gets into your head about how expensive it can be. So please make sure, even if you're a doctor, that you have a Mediclaim policy for yourself and for your loved ones. And finally, you definitely need professional indemnity insurance. No matter how good a doctor you are, there is going to be problems. Even if hundreds of your patients are satisfied, there will always be that dissatisfied one who will make your life a misery. So you need to take all these three kinds of insurance. About life insurance, please don't get suckered into buying what are called unit linked insurance policies. Because all these insurance agents, they make money on every time they sell you a policy. They make an amazing amount of money. They get a fat commission when you sign up, and they get a fat cut each and every year from the premium you pay to the insurance company. People don't know that. So please only buy a basic term plan. Don't waste your money. Don't confuse insurance and investment, no matter what they sell you. And the biggest problem, of course, is all these insurance companies, they're great at collecting the premium. But every time you raise a claim, you'll realize how hard it can be to actually get money out of them. So, what are your traditional investment options? And you know most of these. And there is an entire. Here comes Rucha.
Yeah, so we have one poll here, so I'll just run that before you explain them about all the assets where they can invest. So, according to you all, what builds strong financial portfolio? Here is what you all think. Let us know. So, real estate and share market are most people prefer that they feel that it builds strong financial portfolio. Gold and FDs on the lowest part. So 43% of people here say that real estate builds strong financial portfolio, followed by share market and gold and other assets. Yeah,
Okay,
over to you.
let me go through why I don't agree with that assessment. But let's first start. The first, of course, is cash. And the one thing doctors generate on a regular basis is cash. And it's very tempting to keep that cash and not declare it to the income tax office. And I'll come back a little bit about why that's not such a great idea. You might think that cash is tax free, but it'll come back to haunt you. Gold and silver, of course, there's a lot of comfort, especially in India. And whether you believe it or not, your daughter will, or your mother-in-law will, or your wife will, and that's fine. I think real estate is something which I need to discuss. And there are, of course, all these fixed return investments, whether it's saving bank account or fixed deposits or public provident fund. Then you have other all kinds of equity, which is all the share market, and then you have debt mutual funds. And I'm going to go through these one by one. Let's start with cash. Cash, of course, is the easiest because it comes in all the time. And the beauty about cash is you don't need to pay any tax on it. So that's what most people do. I'm not saying they stuff it under the mattress, but they give it to their friendly builder friend who also happens to be a patient. Will say, Doctor साहब पैसा दे दो, black money मैं तुमको सफेद कर दूंगा, you'll double your investment, all that kind of stuff. But cash is actually pretty terrible as an investment. For one thing, inflation is guaranteed to destroy its value. There is, of course, the risk of theft, and all these tax raids and seizures and surveys will actually end up giving you sleepless nights. Not something which I would recommend at all. Saving bank accounts and fixed deposits, of course, this is the lazy option. पैसा आ गया, बैंक मैनेजर ने बोला डॉक्टर साहब थोड़े पैसे डाल दो, you move it to the fixed deposit, it's making 5%, 6%, whatever else. You think, oh great, my money is multiplying, it's compounding. But that's a delusion. It's actually a lazy option. It's actually a guaranteed method of losing purchasing power, because people often, especially doctors, don't understand the difference between real value and nominal value, which means the purchasing power of 100 rupees today is maybe one tenth of what it was, 40 years ago. So it really doesn't mean as much. So I think it's important to have some money in your bank account, but enough for emergency use. And the reason it's important is you don't want to end up liquidating your important assets just in a time of distress. And again, you should have a public provident fund. That's actually great. But remember, even though all your family members should create a provident fund for, it's great as a return because it's tax exempt. But the problem is there's a big cap. So there's not too much which you can put into that. But you should in any case. So whatever extra money you have, first put in a PPF and then start looking for alternative options. We're all fascinated with gold. That's basically three done. But there are downsides, whether it's theft, you lose it, and that causes such major heartburn. And then there's so much money lost in actually making jewelry and the making charges, and the purity is not assured. So it's a big problem. Having said all this, gold offers a huge hedge against inflation, especially when inflation is expected to go completely out of control. And jewelry is an option because obviously it has utility value and you can show it off. But there are other options, not just physical gold. I think that's unsafe. But it should be digital gold, and you get gold bonds, you get sovereign gold ETFs, and that's something you can talk to your and even before talking to your financial advisor, please Google all this stuff. I keep on reminding people, you guys are smart. There's more than information available online. You should actually look at this. What about real estate? I think what typically happens in the real reason doctors love real estate, as I said, is they use cash for buying it and then you can launder that transaction. But all the great returns which real estate gives you are actually a myth. And the appreciation which you see, अरे यार मैंने मेरा फ्लैट खरीदा तब वो 3,000 रुपये स्क्वायर फुट का था, अभी तो 10,000 रुपये स्क्वायर फुट हो गया है. And we all tell these stories, and these are our anecdotal windfalls. I think if it's actual land and you happen to be staying in a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 city, which is now becoming urbanized, perhaps that's possible. But otherwise, I don't think that's true. And the reason it appreciates is because there is by default a very long holding period because it's hard to buy land. There's so much paperwork, ye bharo, wo bharo, ye due diligence karo, and it's so hard to sell it. So automatically, when you have a real estate transaction, it lasts for at least 3 to 5 years, and the magic of compounding kicks in. So land value appreciates. Certain land value, not across the road, because don't forget, land value, you go ahead and buy it, and some gunda comes and encroaches on your property or your plot. You might as well say bye bye. That's why I came account to safety of capital. So land value appreciates, property does not appreciate as much as you think it does. That's a big problem because whenever you want to buy something, the builder will charge you a premium. And whenever you want to sell something, you'll always be forced to sell at a discount. So there's no liquidity at all, which is a big problem. And I understand this emotional attachment, ye mera ghar hai. But honestly, from a purely business perspective, it's much more cost effective to lease rather than to buy. So just keep that in mind that ultimately a house is actually, if you read this great book, which he talks about passive income, it's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A house is actually a drain on your cash flow because you need to keep on maintaining it all the time. As I said before, real estate creates tensions and it's tension between husband and wife, between brother and all kinds of things, litigation, dispute. And once you go to court, you might as well say bye bye. If you're lucky, your grandchildren may get to see some of your wealth. It gets encroached, and like I said, it's completely illiquid. You can't sell. हाँ ठीक है मेरे 1,000 स्क्वायर फुट फ्लॉट है मैं 100 रुपया में बेचना चाहता हूँ 100 स्क्वायर फुट बेचना चाहता हूँ and then most sales are really distress sales. Big problem. What about shares? Now, I personally am a big believer in the stock market. I honestly think it's the best investment option. I would say 25, 30 years ago, a lot of these stock markets were rigged. They're still rigged. I'm not saying they aren't, but it's only the penny stocks where you speculate which gets rigged. It's very hard to rig a blue chip, quite frankly, because there's so many people, FIIs, DIIs, that you can't go ahead and manipulate the market. And the reality is, as India becomes richer and richer year on year, the economy will grow, the value of shares of good businesses will grow. And you really have three or four options. One is you can buy mutual funds. And often, if you don't have the time or the energy, and especially if you're a young resident, I would just say buy index funds, park your money, and don't look at that. It'll keep on growing while you're keeping on improving your investment in yourself by acquiring knowledge. Of course, you can do it through a PMS, which is called a portfolio management scheme, which is what I do. But then, finding the right person you can trust is not easy. Or if you're inclined, you can go ahead and buy shares of select companies. But let me warn you, if you do not know how to read an annual report, if you do not know how to interpret the footnotes in an annual report, if you don't understand what EBITDA is and you don't understand what depreciation is, please don't try doing this because you'll just end up fooling yourself. And I've burned my fingers many times. You read the Economic Times, अरे यार, this company just got this order, uska share price is जरूर बढ़ने वाला hai. But a good business is not always a good share. Please remember that. In any case, the trick is start investing early, stay invested, and invest over long periods of time. And that's the good thing about an SIP. It forces you to be disciplined, whether you like it or not. So, again, I think this is an important thing. And this, of course, is the $1,000,000 question. You need to be Rakesh Jhunjhunwala or do you need to be Warren Buffett? And I think this is what the reality is that every investment return, no matter what it is, the investor return, which is the return which the investor gets in that investment, is always going to be less. And that's partly because we don't understand how to control our behavior or our emotions, which is why we often end up buying high and selling low. Because you buy when there's a lot of hype and you read the newspaper and you have all these talking heads on TV talking about how much money they made. And then because you have no conviction in what you bought, because you've not bothered to do your homework, the moment the market at share price goes down 10%, you say, oh God, I was an idiot, I got cheated. But is actually, if you have the conviction and you understand why you bought it in the first place, that's the time to actually buy more shares. But the reality is most doctors lose money in the share market, and I've lost it. And then once you burn your fingers, you say, "अरे यार, this is a mug's game. अपने को कुछ समझता नहीं है. सब share market में सब लोग चोर है." And part of the problem, especially during COVID, is every doctor and his dog started day trading based on tips from their patients and tips from their friends and colleagues. And we doctors overestimate our intelligence. I'm sure I do that too. It's not just you guys. So you can't time the market. Trust me about this. All of us think we can. And the trouble is, we forget about the 9 stocks we bought, which tanked. We only remember selectively the one which did well. And honestly, stock selection is a full time occupation, and you actually have better things to do with your time. So I don't think that's a great way of actually engaging yourself. If it's something which gives you a kick and you're happy looking at reading annual reports rather than seeing patients, then I think that's fine. But otherwise, I would discourage you. And I think this is the reason why, because there's so much noise. I've stopped reading newspapers. I don't look at TV news channels because I think they all contribute to noise. Everyone has a hidden agenda. They're all trying to sell you something or the other. And the information which you can actually rely on is much smarter. And of that information, the stuff which might actually be useful to you is actually vanishingly small. And this, of course, is how we end up messing up all our actual returns. Because the more emotionally attached you are, and you can say, hey, you know what? There's something called anchoring. I bought that Titan share when it was 1500. वो जब तक 1500 नहीं होएगा तब तक मैं उसको बेचने नहीं वाला हूँ. So then the market goes down, but you don't want to take your losses, goes down again, don't want to take your losses. That's why you end up keeping on getting stuck with all these losers. And then when you buy something at 1500, goes up to 1600, hey yaar, aisa ban gaya. Ek hafte mein, I'm so smart, let me cash out. And then that same stock goes up to 15,000, and then you realize what an idiot you are. Some of us never realize what idiots we are, but that's a different story. There's a share market trap, of course. Mis-selling is rampant, especially your bank manager, all these financial advisors. And you can't trust a financial advisor when he's making money based on the advice he's giving you. Because let's be honest, interests are not aligned. They're obviously going to care more about their fees rather than your returns. All of us are human beings. And I think this is a bit of a problem. This is how most doctors think of the share market today, that it's a gamble, it's a roulette, that no one really knows, and all people just end up losing money. But honestly, that's not true. But this is exactly what happens. That when there's a lot of hype, you want to buy, this greed comes in, and then the moment the market drops, like it's, oh God, better get out, it's going to tank even more. So then out of fear, you sell, and then you keep on doing it. Actually, the curve is wrong. It should have actually been going downwards, downwards, downwards until you're left with nothing at all. How should you invest in the share market? Honestly, find a registered investment advisor who provides advice only for fees, which means he actually charges you money for giving you advice. Doctors are very reluctant to pay for advice, which I find surprising. I mean, we as doctors are professionals and we charge for the advice we give our patients. So if this guy is giving you good advice, which is helping you get richer, why would you refuse to pay him? But you know how we are. Because there's so much free advice available, we don't value good quality advice. We're reluctant to pay for it. But you need to make sure that you find the right registered investment advisor, that you're on the same page, you have the same philosophy. But please be disciplined when tracking returns. And there's so many great books you can read on this. And honestly, I would say before you buy even a single share, you should have read at least 5 books. And don't get fussed about which particular book. My suggestion is usually buy 5. They're all going to say the same thing. So by the time you're reading the second and third book, you'll say, "Arey yaar, ye to mujhko sab kuch malum hai," so you won't waste much time. Then read one book which is written 30 years ago because that's a classic. And then read a book which is recently. So you'll get a much better sense of understanding how things have changed and what makes sense for you. Again, it's up to you. You can keep on watching the news and the ticker tape with the Sensex and what's happening and what Nirmala ji said about the budget and what that all that stuff. Or you decide that, this is all noise and I'm only going to care about what's going to happen over the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever. Okay, so now we come to the angel investing piece. And this, of course, is where everyone gets rich. Everyone wants to be a VC. Everyone wants to be an angel investor. You read all these stories about Flipkart and Ola and Uber. But the truth is, angel investing will not make you rich. And if you're not careful, it'll actually end up making you poor. Let me warn you. For one thing, it's a very illiquid asset class. Don't expect to get any returns at least for 5 years. You need a lot of patience because let's be honest, startups are like babies. They're immature, they're embryos. They have to grow and it takes time for them to grow. And again, the reality is 80% of them will fail. And if you aren't mature enough to accept this, please don't give any entrepreneur any money because you'll make your life miserable and you'll make his life miserable saying सब मेरा पैसा खा गया डुबा गया सब entrepreneur लोग चोर है. And honestly, there's just so many things happening that he can't control any of this stuff. The most important piece of advice I would give you is only invest money which you can afford to lose without losing any sleep over. Most important thing. And these days I understand angel investing is becoming fashionable. Everyone watches Shark Tank. You have all these angel investor groups and platforms and aggregators and syndicates, and everyone is after doctors. अरे यार तू तो डॉक्टर है तू इतना होशियार है आ जा मैं तुझको ये प्लेटफॉर्म के लिए एंट्री दे देता हूँ you'll make a lot of money we do so much due diligence we screen all these guys and the doctor says अरे यार मुझको तो कुछ समझता नहीं है but वो तो होशियार ही होगा वो तो सीईओ था कोई कंपनी का या कोई तो भी बैंकर था अगर वो पैसे डाल रहा है तो मैं भी मेरा पैसा डालूंगा you can never get rich on second hand knowledge let me warn you and that's a guaranteed way of losing money because all these platforms will only talk about their success stories they will not talk about all their failures and they will only emphasize oh we identified this company and in 2 years it's given an IRR of 100% or what some rubbish number and they won't talk you about the 98 other companies they invested in which have gone completely foot partly because they're trying to sell themselves, they want your money, and partly because of survivorship bias. And that's why all this startup media and all this startup press is loads of rubbish. Because the only guys who issue the press releases are the VCs who actually will fund the startups, who want even more money and they won't tell you about their failures. So honestly, lots of failures. And when I say your LOI is more important than an ROI, that's my personal belief. LOI stands for learning on investment. And the amount you can learn from these young guys, these young enthusiastic entrepreneurs who bring so much energy and passion into the room is enormous. So if you're interested in learning about, let's say, fintech or AI or ML, I think that's brilliant. And that's one of the reasons why I believe in investing in these startups. Again, be realistic. It's important to have a portfolio approach that at least you can diversify and then put it in multiple startups. It's very important in the beginning to join a network where you can at least learn from other people who have far more experience and are far smarter than you. Please read about angel investing, but please remember it's not a get rich scheme. Do your homework. Again, don't fuss about which particular book you read. I always tell people every book is going to give you the same information. It's like it doesn't matter which textbook you read in medicine, it's all going to be the same content, so therefore you should buy at least three or four and then skim through it. And I think you'll enjoy it. Someone just asked me that question. Which books to read? Read the book which you're going to enjoy. Don't read a book which Dr. Malpani tells you to read because just because I like a book doesn't mean that you're going to like it. And all of us have different tastes. So it's worth sampling it. And the book is such a good return on investment. I mean, for 1,000 rupees, you have this expert who has all this real life experience and he's willing to share it with you. So honestly, what's the point of being literate if you refuse to read a book? So why do I enjoy being an angel investor? And I always tell people, boss, I have no success stories. I haven't made any money. Don't listen to me if you want to make money by being an angel investor because I'm the wrong person to listen to. But I enjoy it emotionally as I keep on emphasizing. It makes me optimistic. जब बाल सफेद हो जाते हैं, the constant thing is, अरे यार, the world is going to the dogs. No one appreciates doctors. In the good old days, doctors had such a great life. Now everything is gone to pieces. Patients don't like us. Patients don't appreciate us. Hospitals treat us badly. All patients want to burn down hospitals and beat up on us. But hanging out with bright, young, ambitious entrepreneurs who want to create a better future, some of that energy and enthusiasm is infectious, trust me. It also gives you great networking opportunities because you get to meet other angel investors from different domains. I think as doctors, we're so inbred. 90% of the time, we're talking to other doctors, which is why we become so myopic. And I think this is a great way of understanding there's so much more to life than medicine. I think it's cool for your reputation when people, oh, wow, you're an angel investor. Wow. So I think that helps. And I think the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is I think it actually helps you remain young because you need to learn all the time. So I'm pretty good at IVF. I think I know pretty much all the, well, that's not fair. I know pretty much most of what there is to know about IVF because that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years. But I know zero about crypto. I know zero about algorithms. I know zero about e-commerce. And when I put money in a startup, I expect the entrepreneur to teach me. So when I read his statements, he tells me what's happening, what's working, what's not working. I learn quickly. And again, if you want to have a look at our investments, what we've chosen and stuff, please have a look at our website. And we're very open. We build in public. We try to share information as far as possible. So I think doctors make good angel investors, even though perhaps they may not have that financial expertise. Because I think we're taught to be empathetic. It's an important clinical skill, and you need to be empathetic to entrepreneurs who are young, who are running into trouble and spending sleepless nights because they're running out of cash and don't know what to do next. We have domain expertise in healthcare. So if you want to invest in healthcare startups, that's great because you can act as a brand ambassador, you can act as an evangelist, you can arm twist your colleagues. Hey, boss, why don't you try out this new device which this startup I've invested in creates? And as doctors, you have a lot of goodwill in the community. And of course, because doctors in private practice are entrepreneurs themselves, you understand a lot more about the pain points which entrepreneurs go through. But the good thing is, if you're an angel investor, you actually become a better doctor because your business sense improves because you learn from the mistakes the entrepreneur makes. So, one of the last areas I'm going to cover right now, and this is mostly for the younger doctors, is doctors as entrepreneurs, not just necessarily as medical practice, private practice medicine specialists, but as perhaps creating medical devices, for example. So, if you want to be an entrepreneur, this is a great time. You need to be willing to take calculated risks. You need to be prepared for failure. That's one thing medical college doesn't teach you because failure is not tolerated in medicine. But startup is completely different. You need to be resilient. You need to understand that you will fail 4 times, but as long as you keep on bouncing back, that's okay. Patients can be very helpful and they're quite happy to help doctors because they have a soft corner. And I think the great thing about becoming an entrepreneur is it's a great journey, irrespective of whether you make money or not. But you will learn so much about yourself, your ability to handle other people, your ability to handle money, your ability to handle competition and government and bureaucrats and 50 different things because you have to know all this stuff and you learn a lot about the world as well. Doctors find it very hard to actually run medical startups because, for one thing, all doctors are number one. I'm the captain of the ship. I'm the boss. Where everything I say goes. And they're not very good at being team players, which is a bit of a problem. Finally, we're very good at cramming facts. We can understand all the 5 different branches of this, that, and the other. We're not very good with the hands. We're not taught how to tinker. That's a bit of a problem. Finally, there are not many successful role models whom we can emulate. So it's, the kind of people will say, "Arey yaar, tu to doctor hai, to काय को फुकट का entrepreneur बनना चाहता है?" So it's very hard to find support. Most people find it much safer to be conventional and start a clinic. And I think that's sad because there are so many lost opportunities. Because I think this is the difference between a doctor who does things one patient at a time as compared to the way an engineer looks at the world. Because an engineer doesn't want to solve just one problem at a time. He wants to solve problems which will impact lots of patients, which is why the impact is so much more. The good thing is it's much easier for a doctor to learn to think like an engineer. It's practically impossible for an engineer to think like a doctor. So that's the edge you have. This is something which you might be interested in. At JJ Hospital, we've actually funded what is called the MICE Labs. This is an acronym which stands for Medical Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship. The website is micelabs.in. We're teaching medical students how to innovate because we actually think you need to catch them young. They need to be able to understand that the whole world is their oyster. If an engineer can do it, there's no reason why they can't. And there's so many resources available. So we actually want to encourage and push them. You don't have to be dependent on someone else. You can be an entrepreneur if you want to be. You actually have the right to win, if you ask me. And I think doctors need to partner with healthcare startups. Give these young entrepreneurs a chance. They want to make the world a better place. They want to help doctors take better care of their patients. You can learn a lot from these healthcare entrepreneurs. And if you're willing to be a beta tester, I think that's great for you because you'll learn new stuff and you can teach them. mentor them, and if you really like them, so I would say initially just act as an advisor. And if you really think they're doing well, and over a period of 2 to 3 years they earn your trust, then invest in the ones you admire. It helps you remain on the cutting edge of medicine. So things like telemedicine and robotics and all this stuff will no longer remain foreign to you. You won't feel threatened by artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. This, of course, is a famous slide. It's called Ikigai, and this is what medical students need to focus on: is that you need to find what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. And I think if you can do that, and that's my last slide, I think all of us will be much happier. Okay, Rucha, I'm done.
Thanks a lot, sir. It was amazing. I love the last slide. Ikigai, finding your own rhythm, is very, very important. It's amazing book. So if everyone wants to read, it's amazing read. Really. So before moving on to questions, I want to tell you all, if you want to ask sir questions directly, you can raise hand. I'll accept your request. You can come on stage and interact with sir live. So whoever is interested can raise hand. So till then, I can already see there is one request for you to take one session on for doctors who want to start up. So Dr. Mandar Madki has raised his hand. Accepting your request, Dr. Mandar. Just turn on your audio video and you will be able to interact with them.
Uh, Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Hi.
Sorry, sir, I didn't turn on the video chat. I am in the hospital right now, but I'm listening to your podcast, means your lecture right now in hospital, and it was very interesting. So my question is, what all other means can as doctors invest in certain businesses and what you can say uh, new what old running businesses like any pet store or any other shops or something like that, the part of
So I think that you're doing more on a personal basis because you have a relationship. I think these are great businesses because they generate cash flow on a regular basis. So effectively, this is what we call revenue based financing, which means you have someone who, let's say, earns 5 lakhs as a pet store, and he wants some more money, which his bank manager doesn't want to give him. Then you can definitely give him that money because you have a personal relationship. And by helping him to earn even more, because you've given him a cash infusion, you can share some of the profits. But you're not going to be able to exit that business. Please understand that.
Good evening, sir, and good evening, ma'am. I'm a junior resident, second year. So I was recently going through this stock market and like apps called Grow, Zerodha. Frankly speaking, I don't have much knowledge about the stock market. But sir, how one resident should go with the stock market, like in the initial phase for beginners like us?
So I would say first step is information therapy. Buy at least 3 or 4 books where you understand what your goal is in life and then how investing can help you reach that goal. Don't get carried away by all the fraud and the financial newspapers and the stuff you read on that, because they're all out to sell you something. That's really dangerous. And I think things like Zerodha are actually very dangerous, especially because they kind of make it so easy. It's a click of a button, and then everyone just shares their success stories, and you don't know what you're doing, and that's literally like gambling. So I think that's dangerous. So I think if you're not sure what to do, your best bet would be to do what is called an index fund, which charges very, very low fees. So over time, we know that the Sensex will grow as the economy grows. So you'll make those returns, which I think is great in the beginning. And then you can start reading more stuff. You can buy annual reports. You can buy books on how to decide. My personal philosophy is what is called value investing. It's not technical. It's basically this is how you determine what the value of a company is, and it's all based on information which is available publicly. So Warren Buffett, for example, is a value investor. But there's lots of books. And I think my limited point is if you're not willing to invest the time and the energy to read the books, please don't waste your money because you'll just end up burning your fingers.
Yes, sir. Firstly, I want to thank you for this really amazing session, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. It was really enlightening. Sir, I'm actually a medical intern right now. I'm in my internship and I'm preparing for my residency for the for NEET and other exams. So I'm also interested in startups and other such things. So I wanted to ask you, how do I balance studying or possibly entering residency soon and giving time to something like this? That was my question.
So I think each of these things is quite honestly a full-time profession. So you need to kind of decide
Right,
what's important. And the best thing to do
right,
is if you have a friend who's running a healthcare startup or someone who's interested in this thing, then you can offer to engage
okay,
with them and providing them with input. The good thing is today
right,
everything is done digital, so it's not very hard to do a lot of this stuff. And I think it'll just make your life a
right,
lot more interesting. So if you make yourself available, and that's what social media is so great for. Hey, I'm a
correct.
smart intern. I'm happy to help startups. I'm happy to do this for no cost or whatever else. That's a great way of engaging.
Okay, 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 sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sagar. Yes. So, sir, there are few questions. I'll just take highlighted ones. If I start investing in MFs, mutual funds, how many schemes and how many AMFs should I have to start with? Is the question.
I think that's a good question. But again, this is stuff which you need to decide. There's no one single answer which fits everyone. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Because the answer is going to depend on what your risk appetite is, how old you are, how much of your money you're putting in your mutual funds. And unless you know what your goals are, you should never take advice from anyone else. And you definitely shouldn't take advice from someone like me who doesn't understand what your personal circumstances are. And the answer to that question will change over time, depending on how old you get, depending on how much money you want to invest. But it's worth trying to do some homework to answer those questions for yourself. After you've done your homework, you'll then be able to evaluate advice from someone else much better.
Right.
I think one of the other questions someone had asked in the middle is how do you find a registered investment advisor you can trust? And how do you know whom to trust? I think that's an interesting question because that's the same question patients ask about doctors, boss. How do you find a doctor you can trust? And it's true, there is no simple answer to that question. And there are good doctors and bad doctors, and there are good investment advisors and bad investment advisors. So the rule is simple trust but verify. It means do your homework so you can make sense of what the person is telling you. So you don't allow people to take you for a ride.
Right. Okay, so with this, we have covered many good questions, and Sir has taught us a lot of interesting concepts. So we would love to have you to talk about startups and many more interesting things. The story that you shared, Crowwala, the all millennials have heard the first part of it, like just to put the stones, but the second part was really interesting, and we all should think over it from all the perspectives of entrepreneurship, finance, and everything. So thanks a lot for your time. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you so much, Rucha. I really love the energy and enthusiasm, and I love the fact that you're willing to listen to feedback from me. I think that's a good sign because that's one way of improving your product. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, you can, just my email is drmalpani@drmalpani.com. So if you
Yes,
want, you can
I'll
just put that down. So I'm
put
very
in the
happy to
comment.
answer emails. Just
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot.
okay. Thank you so much.